My body, my choice. Words meant to empower, twisted into a weapon that cut deeper than any infidelity could. I thought I'd married the love of my life, but 3 weeks after saying I do, I was sleeping next to a stranger who refused to touch me, wouldn't kiss me, treated me like contaminated goods in my own home. The shocking part? He used progressive language as armor, weaponizing consent to hide something far darker. I couldn't believe this was my reality. Newlywed but lonelier than I'd ever been. Humiliated by rejection while he smiled that cold, calculating smile. The truth I discovered wasn't just about cheating or lies. It was about a criminal enterprise built on betrayal, family drama that redefined what family betrayal could even mean. What happened next exposed a web of fraud so twisted, so calculated, that once we uncovered the interstate connections, the FBI had no choice but to step in. Little did he know, the naive wife he thought he'd backstabbed was about to become his worst nightmare. I thought saying I do would change everything, but it changed nothing at all. My name is Kira Morgan, 29 years old, standing in my Brooklyn apartment 3 weeks after the wedding, wondering why my husband acts like I'm invisible. Connor wouldn't touch me, wouldn't kiss me, wouldn't even hold my hand anymore. Every time I tried to get close, he'd pull back with this cold smile and say, "My body, my choice, Becca." The way he used those words, twisting something empowering into a weapon, it made my stomach turn. I couldn't believe this was the same man who'd whispered promises in my ear just months ago. The betrayal started small, like poison dripping slowly into water. Connor would come home late, smelling like perfume that wasn't mine, his eyes distant and calculating. When I asked about his day, he'd give me rehearsed answers that felt hollow, fake. Connor knew about my grandmother's trust fund before he proposed. He'd asked questions that felt loving at the time, about my future, security, legacy. Our bedroom became a war zone of rejection. Him on one side, me on the other, an invisible wall between us. He'd scroll through his phone with this secretive smile, typing messages he'd quickly hide whenever I walked by. Something was terribly wrong, and every cell in my body screamed that this wasn't just about boundaries or stress. The humiliation cut deeper than any knife could. My friends would ask how married life was treating me, and I'd lie through my teeth, painting smiles over the aching loneliness. At night, I'd lie awake replaying our relationship, searching for clues I'd missed. Had he always been this cold? Was I blind to the signs? The family drama I'd imagined would come from in-laws or money never materialized. Instead, it came from the man sleeping next to me who treated me like a stranger. Dignity became something I had to fight for in my own home, in my own marriage. Then the patterns started emerging, sharp and undeniable. Connor claimed he worked late at Henderson and Associates downtown, but when I casually mentioned visiting him for lunch, panic flashed across his face. He'd leave every Thursday at exactly 7 p.m., returning at midnight with weak excuses about networking events. His phone was surgically attached to his hand, password protected with a 6-digit code he'd never shared. One morning, I found a receipt in his jacket pocket. 24 red roses from an upscale florist, purchased the day he'd told me he was working overtime. The truth was hiding in plain sight, mocking me. My self-worth was crumbling, brick by brick, night by silent night. I'd catch my reflection in the bathroom mirror and barely recognize the exhausted woman staring back. Was I not attractive enough? Not interesting enough? Had I done something to deserve this emotional abandonment? The karma I believed in, that good people got good things, felt like a cruel joke. But underneath the hurt, something else was growing. A cold, focused anger. This wasn't just about intimacy anymore. This was about lies, manipulation, and something darker I couldn't yet name. I made a decision that night, standing in our kitchen while Connor worked late again. No more playing the confused, hurt wife. If he wanted to hide secrets, I'd become a detective. If he wanted to play games, I'd learn the rules and beat him at them. My grandmother had taught me how to document everything. Receipts, timelines, proof. And those lessons were about to save my life. The shocking realization hit me. I didn't know my husband at all, and he'd been counting on that ignorance. But ignorance was about to become his worst enemy, not mine. The investigation started with trash, literally digging through garbage like some desperate housewife from a bad thriller. But desperation breeds clarity, and I needed answers more than I needed pride. I found old receipts stuffed in coat pockets, dinners for two at romantic restaurants I'd never been to, purchases at jewelry stores that never resulted in gifts for me. Connor's laptop sat on his desk every morning while he showered, and one day I timed it perfectly. 18 minutes was all I had. My hands shook as I opened his email, scanning through corporate jargon until I found personal accounts he'd hidden. Messages to someone named A filled with inside jokes and promises that made my skin crawl. The payback I was planning required evidence, concrete proof that what I suspected wasn't just paranoid imagination. I started keeping a journal, documenting every lie, every inconsistency, every moment his story didn't match reality. When Connor said he was meeting clients in Boston, I checked his credit card statements, purchases made in Manhattan instead. The vengeance brewing inside me wasn't hot and explosive, it was cold, methodical, patient. I'd smile at him over morning coffee while mentally cataloging every deception. He thought I was naive, broken, easy to manipulate. Let him think that a little longer. Henderson and Associates became my obsession. I called the firm one afternoon using a fake name, asking to speak with Connor Mitchell, my husband's supposed boss. The receptionist paused, confused, then politely informed me no one by that name worked there. My heart stopped. I tried again with Connor's name. Nothing. The company existed, but my husband didn't work there and never had. The shocking revelation crashed over me. Everything was a lie. His job, his schedule, his entire professional identity was fabricated. What else was fake? Who had I actually married? Every discovery led to darker questions, like following a thread into a maze with no exit. I hired a friend's cousin who worked in IT to help me access Connor's cloud storage without him knowing. We found photos, hundreds of them. Connor with another woman, laughing, kissing, holding hands. But what made my blood run cold wasn't just the infidelity, it was the ring on her finger, a wedding ring. Gold band, similar to mine, worn with the same casual permanence. The woman, tagged in one photo as Amanda, looked happy, loved, completely unaware she was sharing my husband. The betrayal wasn't singular, it was systemic, calculated, deliberately cruel. I couldn't believe I'd been so blind, so trusting, so stupidly in love with a ghost. But crying wouldn't get me justice. Action would. I needed professional help, someone who dealt with this kind of twisted family drama daily. I found Patricia Henley's law office online, specializing in fraud, marriage disputes, and asset protection. Her reviews mentioned words like fierce, thorough, doesn't back down. Perfect. I booked a consultation for the next day. Sitting in Patricia's office felt like the first honest moment I'd had in months. I laid everything out, the rejection, the lies, the fake job, the photos, the other woman with a wedding ring. Patricia listened without interrupting, her expression growing more serious with each detail. When I finished, she leaned forward and said something that changed everything. "Kira, what you're describing might not just be infidelity. This could be bigamy, which is a crime." The word hung in the air between us, heavy and damning. Connor hadn't just cheated. He might have married both of us. Patricia handed me a business card for Michael Torres, private investigator, with a track record of exposing marriage fraud. "You need more than photos," she explained, her voice steady and professional. "You need documentation, marriage certificates, financial records, communication logs. If Connor is living a double life, we need to prove it conclusively." I felt something shift inside me. This wasn't just about my broken heart anymore. This was about stopping a criminal, preventing him from destroying other women the way he'd tried to destroy me. The justice I craved suddenly had a legal framework, a pathway forward that didn't involve just suffering in silence. Michael Torres looked nothing like the stereotypical private eye from movies. No trench coat, no whiskey habit, just a calm professional with intelligent eyes and a tablet full of databases. He listened to my story, cross-referencing details in real time. "Connor Mitchell, you said? Married 3 weeks ago in Brooklyn?" He typed rapidly, pulling up public records, social media archives, property databases. Within 15 minutes, he'd found discrepancies, addresses that didn't match, employment histories that contradicted themselves, financial accounts registered under slight variations of Connor's name. "This man is methodical," Michael said grimly. "That usually means he's done this before." The investigation kicked into high gear with a level of professionalism that made everything feel suddenly, terrifyingly real. Michael installed discrete tracking software on my laptop to monitor Connor's location when he used our shared Wi-Fi. We requested financial statements from banks, credit unions, anywhere Connor might have hidden assets. Patricia filed preliminary legal documents, not divorce yet, just protective measures to freeze joint accounts and prevent Connor from accessing anything that was mine. Every step felt like reclaiming power, taking back control he'd stolen through manipulation and lies. The cheated, humiliated victim was transforming into something sharper, more dangerous. Then came the most crucial tool. A small recording device, barely larger than a flash drive, legally permissible in New York for documenting conversations I was part of. Michael taught me how to use it, where to hide it, how to prompt Connor into revealing information without seeming suspicious. "Get him talking about money," Michael advised. "Ask about your future together, investments, plans." Men, like this, can't help bragging about their schemes. Their ego is their weakness. I practiced the conversation in my head, rehearsing questions that sounded innocent but would expose his intentions. The opportunity came on a Friday evening when Connor was unusually relaxed, 2 glasses of wine making him chatty. I played the loving wife, asking about our financial future, whether we should combine bank accounts, what his plans were for our investments. The recording device sat hidden in my cardigan pocket, capturing every word. Connor smiled, that predatory smile I'd learned to recognize, and started talking. He mentioned the prenuptial agreement we'd signed, how it protected both of us, how my trust fund was safely positioned. But then he slipped. "Once the transfer clears and we hit the 6-month mark, everything shifts." 6-month mark for what? I pushed gently, carefully, keeping my voice curious rather than accusatory. "What happens at 6 months?" Connor's expression flickered, calculation mixed with arrogance. "Becca, you're so sweet," he said condescendingly. "The prenup has clauses about asset division after 6 months of marriage. If we divorce then, certain accounts become marital property, accessible to both parties." My stomach dropped. He wasn't planning to stay married. He was planning to rob me. The revenge I'd been plotting suddenly felt justified, necessary, essential. But I needed him to say more, to incriminate himself completely. Michael Torres worked faster than I'd imagined possible, pulling threads I didn't know existed. Within a week, he'd uncovered documentation that made my blood freeze. Connor Mitchell was already legally married to Amanda Chen, married 2 years ago in Nevada, never divorced, still very much legally bound. The bigamy charge Patricia had mentioned wasn't theoretical anymore. It was documented, provable, prosecutable. But the shocking revelation didn't stop there. Michael pulled up property records, tax documents, and cross-referenced Social Security numbers. "Kira," he said carefully, "Amanda isn't just Connor's wife. She's his sister." The truth hit me like a physical blow, making the room spin and my stomach churn. I locked myself in the bathroom and threw up. Then I wiped my face, looked in the mirror, and realized crying wouldn't save me. Evidence would. Connor and Amanda weren't husband and wife. They were siblings running a criminal enterprise disguised as romance. Family betrayal didn't just come from betrayed trust. It came from weaponizing family bonds to exploit strangers. Michael explained the pattern. They'd identify wealthy women, usually through dating apps or social events. Connor would romance them, marry them quickly, and use fraudulent prenuptial agreements to access trust funds, inheritances, or liquid assets. Amanda played various roles. Sometimes the sympathetic sister-in-law, sometimes the concerned friend, always helping manipulate the victim into vulnerable positions. The investigation revealed at least 6 previous victims across 4 states: California, Texas, Florida, and now New York. Each woman had a similar story: whirlwind romance, quick marriage, emotional withdrawal, then a divorce that left them financially devastated while Connor and Amanda disappeared with hundreds of thousands of dollars. The karma I'd hoped existed seemed absent from their lives. They'd been getting away with this for years, leaving destroyed women and drained bank accounts in their wake. But patterns also meant evidence, and evidence meant charges that could actually stick. Patricia assembled a case file that read like a crime thriller: wire fraud, identity theft, conspiracy to commit fraud, and bigamy across multiple jurisdictions. The prenuptial agreement Connor had convinced me to sign was completely fraudulent, drafted by a lawyer who didn't exist, notarized with a forged seal, designed solely to confuse and intimidate. My trust fund, worth approximately $1.8 million from my late grandmother's estate, was his target. Patricia explained how they'd pulled it off. Because they falsified Amanda's identity, the Nevada marriage was legally registered under a fake name, which is why both bigamy and identity fraud charges applied. The lied-to, backstabbed wife was about to become his biggest mistake. Every document, every recording, every financial trail was photographed, copied, and secured in 3 separate locations. The federal authorities became involved when Patricia presented evidence of interstate fraud. Connor and Amanda had crossed state lines repeatedly to commit their schemes, making it a federal case under the FBI's jurisdiction. Special Agent Lisa Yamamoto reviewed our documentation with clinical precision, her expression growing more severe with each page. "This is organized fraud on a significant scale," she confirmed. "We'll need to coordinate with state prosecutors, but you've built a solid foundation here. Now we need to catch them in the act, get them attempting to access or transfer funds fraudulently." The trap was elegantly simple. I would file for divorce, playing the heartbroken wife who just wanted out of the marriage quickly. The divorce papers would trigger Connor's timeline. He'd try to access the fraudulent accounts we'd set up as bait, accounts that appeared to hold portions of my trust fund, but were actually monitored by federal agents. Every transaction, every login attempt, every communication between Connor and Amanda would be documented and traced. The shocking part wasn't the complexity of the scheme. It was how easily they'd gotten away with it before. But their luck was about to run out, spectacularly and permanently. I filed for divorce on a Tuesday morning, delivering papers to Connor at a cafe we'd once considered our place. His face flickered between surprise, concern, and something calculating, already running numbers in his head. "Becca, we can work through this," he said, reaching for my hand with manufactured tenderness. I pulled away, playing my role perfectly, the defeated wife who just wanted freedom. "I can't do this anymore, Connor. I just want it to be over." He nodded, sympathy masking what I now recognized as anticipation. The payback was so close I could taste it, metallic and satisfying. Behind the scenes, federal agents and Patricia's legal team monitored everything. We'd created fake bank accounts that appeared legitimate, complete with statements showing my trust fund accessible for marital asset division. Connor took the bait within 48 hours. Michael's surveillance captured him meeting Amanda at a Starbucks in Queens, laptops open, discussing account numbers and transfer timelines. The recording device I'd hidden in Connor's car, legally placed since it was technically my vehicle too, captured their entire conversation. Amanda's voice was sharp, businesslike. "Once the funds transfer, we close everything and move to Seattle. New identities, same system, clean slate." Connor's response made my skin crawl even listening to the playback. This one was almost too easy. She actually believed the whole boundaries act. Sometimes I think they want to be lied to. Their laughter, casual, cruel, completely devoid of empathy, crystallized every ounce of rage I'd been suppressing. The humiliation I'd felt transformed into cold determination. These weren't star-crossed lovers or even simple criminals. They were predators who viewed human trust as a resource to exploit. Every woman they'd destroyed deserved justice, and I was positioned to deliver it. The digital trap sprung on a Thursday afternoon. Connor logged into the fake accounts from a computer at a public library, smart enough to avoid using his personal devices, but not smart enough to realize we'd been tracking his every move. He initiated transfer protocols designed to move $750,000 into an offshore account registered to a shell corporation. The moment he hit confirm, federal agents who'd been positioned throughout the library closed in. Michael texted me a single word: done. I was across town in Patricia's office, watching a video feed as Connor's face shifted from confusion to panic to rage in seconds. Amanda was arrested simultaneously at their actual apartment, the one I'd never known existed, in Newark. Agents seized computers, phones, documents, and found evidence of their entire operation: fake identities, forged legal documents, victim lists, with notes rating women by accessibility and asset value. The shocking scope of their criminal enterprise expanded with every box of evidence carried out. They'd stolen nearly $2 million across all victims, destroyed families, and treated human beings like ATMs. But the karma they'd avoided for so long crashed down with federal weight and legal precision. I didn't attend Connor's arraignment. Patricia represented my interests while I stayed home, processing everything in the quiet apartment that finally felt like mine again. The charges were extensive: wire fraud, identity theft, conspiracy to commit fraud, bigamy, and falsifying legal documents. Connor faced up to 12 years in federal prison. Amanda faced 8. Restitution orders would return funds to every victim they could identify, though money couldn't repair the emotional damage they'd inflicted. But watching the news coverage that evening, seeing Connor's mugshot on local television, I felt something unexpected. Not triumph, but relief. The nightmare was over. The trial took 6 months, a blur of depositions, testimonies, and legal maneuvering that Patricia navigated with fierce expertise. Connor tried pleading down, offering deals, blaming Amanda, but the evidence was overwhelming and irrefutable. 5 other victims testified, their stories heartbreakingly similar to mine: love bombing, rushed marriages, emotional manipulation, financial devastation. We formed a strange support group, women who'd been targeted by the same predators, finding strength in shared trauma and collective justice. The dignity they'd tried to strip from us became our armor. The shame they'd inflicted became our motivation to ensure they never hurt anyone again. The judge, a stern woman named Catherine Winters, showed no mercy during sentencing. "You didn't just steal money," she told Connor and Amanda. "You weaponized trust, intimacy, and family bonds to systematically destroy people's lives. This court finds your actions reprehensible and deserving of the maximum sentence allowable." Connor received 12 years in federal prison, Amanda 8 years, and both faced lifetime supervision after release. Nearly $1.9 million was recovered and distributed among victims. I received back my full $750,000 plus damages. But the real justice wasn't financial. It was seeing them held accountable, publicly exposed, permanently marked as the criminals they were. Reclaiming my life happened gradually, then suddenly. I moved out of the Brooklyn apartment into a brownstone in Park Slope. Fresh start, new neighborhood, space that had never known Connor's presence. I changed my name back to Morgan, scrubbed every trace of Mrs. Mitchell from existence. The self-worth I'd lost came back differently, harder, wiser, less willing to ignore red flags or accept manipulation. I started volunteering with organizations that helped fraud victims, turning my experience into expertise that could protect others. The betrayal that nearly destroyed me became the foundation for a stronger, more resilient version of myself. The other victims and I stayed in contact, creating a network of women who'd survived the same predators. We'd meet quarterly, sometimes for coffee, sometimes for dinner, always for solidarity. Sarah, who'd lost her inheritance in California, was rebuilding her therapy practice. Jennifer from Texas had gone back to school, studying law with plans to specialize in fraud cases. Maria from Florida had written a book about her experience, turning trauma into testimony that might save other women from similar fates. We weren't defined by what happened to us. We were defined by how we fought back and helped each other heal. The shocking realization that stayed with me wasn't about Connor's cruelty. I'd come to terms with his sociopathy. It was about my own strength, my resourcefulness, my ability to transform from victim to victor when everything in my life screamed for surrender. I'd documented everything, built a legal case, coordinated with federal investigators, and helped dismantle a criminal operation that had destroyed multiple lives. The woman I'd been before Connor, trusting, romantic, perhaps naive, evolved into someone more complex, cautious but not cynical, careful but not closed off, powerful in ways I'd never imagined. As I stood on my new brownstone stoop one evening, watching Brooklyn's sunset paint the sky orange and purple, I thought about boundaries and choices. Connor had twisted those words into weapons, using language meant to protect autonomy as a shield for his deception. But real boundaries weren't about control or manipulation. They were about self-respect, clear communication, and refusing to accept treatment that diminished your humanity. My body, my choice wasn't a weapon. It was a truth. And the choice I'd made to fight back, to seek justice, to protect future victims, that was the most important choice of all. So here's what I want to know. Have you ever felt that gut instinct that something was deeply wrong, but everyone around you said you were overreacting? Did you listen to that voice, or did you silence it to keep the peace? Because here's the shocking truth nobody talks about. Sometimes the person lying next to you is the most dangerous stranger you'll ever meet. The revenge I got wasn't about hatred. It was about justice, about reclaiming dignity they tried to steal, about ensuring their karma finally caught up with crimes they'd been committing for years. Drop a comment below and tell me, would you have investigated, or would you have walked away the moment intimacy stopped? Have you ever discovered someone's double life, or suspected you were being lied to on a massive scale? What's your story of betrayal, payback, or standing up for your self-worth when everything screamed at you to just stay quiet and take it? I read every comment, and your experiences matter. They might even save someone else from similar family betrayal. If this story exposed something you needed to hear, if it validated your instincts or made you question red flags you've been ignoring, then subscribe to this channel right now and smash that notification bell, because I'm bringing you more real stories of vengeance, justice, and women who refuse to be shamed into silence. Insights that are provocative, raw, and completely eye-opening. Don't let the algorithm decide when you see content that could change your perspective or literally save your life. Stay sharp, stay vigilant, and remember, trusting your instincts isn't paranoia, it's survival.